Hello everyone, I'm Ben Lombard, and with me today is Mr. Raymond Nelson. Raymond is the principal of the International Polygraph Studies Center. He's also a director of the American Polygraph Association, and he's also a therapist dealing with sex offenders, post-conviction sex offenders for that matter as well. So Raymond, I'm going to ask you just tell a little bit about yourself, and then I would also like you to tell us a little bit more about the post-conviction sex offender treatment program that has been in place for quite some time.
Right.
In the States.
Well, my name is Raymond Nelson, and I'm a psychotherapist in the United States working with convicted sexual offenders and victims of sexual abuse. I'm also a polygraph examiner, as you said, involved in polygraph research and policy development for sex offender treatment and supervision programs, in addition to a lot of research with the polygraph itself. In the U.S., we've been using the polygraph with convicted sexual offenders for over 40 years now, since the 1980s. And we've had pretty good success with it. It's an interesting program. It's, of course, this is one of those topics nobody wants to talk about, but the situation is that most convicted sexual offenders in the United States actually reside in the community. And so the goal of the polygraph is to provide another layer of support to the parole supervision process that involves a lot of rules that we'd actually like people to follow the rules for safety purposes and success in the community, and then of course therapy, which is successful when people make use of it in the right ways. The situation we had with sex offenders is the tendency to manipulate and violate rules and cross boundaries and under-report or just plain lie about what they're actually doing during the week. There's 1 hour a week where they're present in the therapy with their therapist, or maybe an hour with their parole officer. But there's 160 hours every week, so that means there's 167 hours every week where they're not being directly face-to-face supervised by their therapist or probation officer. So polygraph is a tool for broadening the scope of supervision and our oversight, and increasing the level of engagement and honesty and compliance with the therapy and probation supervision programs. Okay.
So in a nutshell, if somebody gets left out of parole, this is where the treatment program would be used effectively.
Right. It would be a condition.
In other words, instead of sitting in jail and rot, where they're not getting any treatment, or not the treatment that they should be getting.
Right. There's not enough therapy in jail or prison, and many convicted people actually have skills that are employable, and the more they spend time in prison, the less employable they become. So if possible, we'd like to see them preserve their homes, preserve their careers and employability, pay their own taxes, and preserve their family, and be less of a burden on the overall economic aspects of the community. So it's a good program. They're going to be in the community eventually, unless the plan is to incarcerate people forever, which that is almost never the plan.
Right. So the system works in such a way that obviously the parole officer is overlooking this, and then you would have the therapist on the one side, and also the polygraph examiner on the other side, making sure everything falls in place. Is that right? That's right.
And there might be other professionals involved as well. If there's perhaps a psychiatrist, or if a person is involved in a church or religious group, we'd like to involve those people. So we want to kind of maintain a network of communication among the various professionals that would surround an individual's functioning in the community, including perhaps their employers. So everywhere they go, they would have a sense of accountability that whoever they're spending time with today is going to be talking to the people they're going to spend time with tomorrow.
Okay, and beauty of it is that it does not have to become a complete burden to the state managing this program. Is
No,
that right?
yeah, many states in the U.S. actually consider being supervised in the community as an alternative to incarceration. We consider that to be a privilege, not a right. And part of that privilege includes certain expectations, like they will follow certain rules and they will attend therapy. And many states require that convicted people fund that themselves. They pay for that themselves. And we take the same approach to the polygraph. The polygraph is not as frequent as the therapist, but we have the advantage of being able to ask questions over protracted periods of time. So it doesn't have to be as frequent. But it's not an economic burden to the community because they pay for it themselves.
Oh, so in other words, the treatment in most states, the convicted person would pay for
if they're
for the treatment and the polygraph.
if they're on probation supervision, which means they're allowed to reside in the community and work and maintain their kind of own economic self-sufficiency, then the expectation is that they would pay for their own therapy and polygraphs.
Okay. Now, certain things can be monitored by means of that, and we're looking at the drug abuse, we're looking at preventing sex offenders to be alone with minor children or frequenting places where the minor children are left on their own. Also preventing them from looking at pornographic material or even sharing pornographic. So there's a lot that we can do from a polygraph examiner side to try and make this world a better place for our children.
So the assumption is, yes, you're right. The assumption is that sex offenders in the community will be safer and they will be more successful in therapy and more successful on probation or parole if they follow the rules and tell the truth. And so some of the rules are quite simple, but in some ways complicated, like we'd like to know who they are involved in a sexual or intimate relationship with. If that for some reason has to be a secret, there's some possibility that there's something wrong with it. Maybe their intimate partner has children, or the intimate partner is a vulnerable person. Pornography, we know, doesn't cause sexual offenses, but it does contribute to a lot of sexual thinking and sexual arousal, so we'd like to reduce that. We do impose rules like no pornography. And if somebody can't follow those rules, then it gives the therapist an opportunity to start to figure out, is it a problem of they don't want to follow the rules, or maybe they don't have adequate self-control to follow the rules. And those are two different problems with two different therapeutic approaches. Certainly some of the rules say, don't touch children and don't be alone with children. And it's nice to be able to verify that. It's nice also to be able to catch people if they're violating that kind of rules. So very simple rules in addition. So the goal is not to wait to catch people after they reoffend, although that is a goal too, and it can happen. That's not really the primary goal. The primary goal is to prevent reoffenses by identifying lower level non-compliance behaviors that are indicative of an escalating risk level that would eventually culminate in a new offense. New offenses, it turns out, are not terribly common, but when they do occur, they're very, very expensive in terms of the impact on the victim, the family, the community, the neighborhood, the school, the church, the business. It's a devastating crime.
From your experience as a therapist and also as a long-standing therapist, probably as long as you've been a polygraph examiner, what would you claim the success rate to be?
Yeah, that's a question for research. So I don't probably responsibly want to guess at that. But we do know that sex offenders are more successful. They follow the rules more often. From your own experience
as well.
Yeah, I don't want to guess at what the numbers are, and I didn't study that. That's not a responsible thing for a researcher to do.
I understand.
But we know, for example, from experience and some studies, that approximately half of the convicted people in the community are actually violating the rules of their supervision. And they're violating the rules and instructions that their treatment program might ask of them, which are very similar to the rules of their supervision. Things like don't touch children and don't use
Yeah.
pornography. Alcohol and drugs is certainly a rule as well. We ask people not to use alcohol and drugs, and we mean it. We have other tools that we can monitor alcohol and drugs with, so we don't often use the polygraph for that. We could, but polygraph is expensive, and some of those other
Right.
tests are less expensive. So we prefer to focus on the things that we don't have other tools to monitor, like it would be nice if the therapist knows all of the different people that a person is engaging in sexual contact with for safety reasons. And if we can make sure that those people are adequately informed about the supervision rules that the individual is subject to in terms of boundaries with children and pornography, and if they have other expectations related to location or curfew in the community.
All right. Anything else? Anything else from your side, Raymond? What is there what you would like to bring to us?
I think the most important aspects of this are that the goal of polygraph is to support compliance with probation and supervision rules, and to support their progress and success in sex offense specific treatment through compliance with rules, and also honesty in their discussion and self-reporting. We certainly, as therapists, we ask people what they're doing with their time every week. They don't always tell the truth. Many therapists make a living being lied to and being, hearing excuses. And so it's a tool for kind of slicing through that a little bit more rapidly and getting to the point of progress and getting to the point where the presence of convicted sex offenders in the community is less impacting to people, because the mere presence of a sex offender in your neighborhood is harmful to the neighborhood, right? Nobody's happy about that, because they create fear, even if they are following the rules. So this is a tool even for the offenders, if they are following the rules, to assure people that they are following the rules and reduce that impact of fear. For example, I have neighbors who have learned over time, and we've practiced this, they would tell you that if you see them talking to children, you probably should contact the authorities, right? And having kind of set up that contract and understanding with their own community, they stay away from children. So it's very nice.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
We also know that the program has also been implemented in the UK with
Certainly.
great success. It's something that we don't see in South Africa as yet. Although we already have some polygraph examiners that have had specific training in this field, we're also looking at the possibility of expanding that, or even training more people in the nearby future.
And training is not just for polygraph examiners. Training is also for therapists and supervision officers who would need to become familiar and adept with how to make use of the polygraph in their work.
But it could also reduce or alleviate the overcrowding of prisons as well in the process, where people that if the court decide that this is a way to go, to alleviate that pressure as well.
Oh yeah, as I said, many convicted people have skills that businesses and they could be using, and if they are incarcerated for too long, they lose that, and then the long-term economic burden on the community is even greater. And so if we can successfully, the old saying, the longer people live in an institutional setting, the better they are at living in an institutional setting.
Correct.
And if that's our goal, I guess I understand, but oftentimes that's not really our goal. Our goal is sometimes that people have families, if they have children of their own. The goal is that families should be together if at all possible, and that's a difficult thing to do when somebody's convicted of a sexual offense. So we look for ways to make that safer by broadening the supervision network around a person, including other professionals in a team, a multidisciplinary treatment and supervision team, and including the polygraph in that multidisciplinary treatment and supervision team, so that we can ask people and observe people for more than just 1 hour at a time, and we don't have to rely solely on their self-report. The problem with self-reporting, even though it's very valuable, is that people have a tendency to massively under-report the problem behaviors
Right.
that they're engaging in, how much alcohol they're actually drinking, and how much pornography they're actually using, and their tendency to have poor boundaries with children, their tendency to find relationships that might not be healthy, intimate relationships that might not be healthy. And in general, some sex offenders, many perhaps, have a tendency to use sexual behavior to remediate non-sexual needs, like stress or boredom or loneliness or anger, frustration or sadness, or whatever their problems is. So again, we want to evaluate every individually and find out their profile. Some people are criminally violent, some people have serious personality disorders, some people have their own traumatic abuse histories, some don't, and some have serious mental health conditions. So it's going to be an individualized approach, but the polygraph can definitely be a very useful adjunct to supervision, court-ordered supervision, and court-ordered treatment.
I'm quite enthusiastic about the fact that South Africa is ready and ripe for this to be implemented. And for that reason, if there are any other questions that either Raymond Nelson can answer, or if whatever, please feel free to call us. My name is Ben Lombard. My cell phone number is 083-793-1152, and I can also be reached, both Raymond and I can be reached on the email address info@polygraph-training.co.za. Thank you very much for that informative session, and looking forward to seeing this being implemented in South Africa.
Yes, thank you for your questions.
Thank you.